to get the link before you go live, and I've just not figured it out yet.
It's all right. I usually just have to like refresh your channel a couple of times until it shows up.
I know there's a way to do it.
Oh, there we are. I see it. Can I just say I finished The Way of Kings this morning?
Oh, how'd it go?
So well. I mean, I knew I would love it, but finally I got the audio copy back and finished it. It feels like a great achievement.
Yeah, that's been like how many months in the making?
So many months in the making. Okay. Close that. Stay here. Awesome.
Hello, Blueberry. How did you like the audiobook?
I really did like it, actually. I know
Blueberry. Sorry.
You are, yeah. If that's your first reading, if that's your first hob. No, I really did like it. I got really used to the character, like to the narrators. And so because I had to return it at the library and then wait for it to come back on hold for me, when I got it back again, I think I only had like 10% left, which was still like 8 hours. But it just felt like kind of a bit of a homecoming with the authors, right? I was like right back into the story of it all. So yeah,
I will say, as critical as I am of Sanderson, I do like the ending of that book. Hey, Heidi.
That was good. Hey, Heidi.
The Sanderlanche is pretty good there.
Yeah, and I've got Words of Radiance on hold. I own a copy, but I've got it on hold as well.
I'll be interested in your thoughts on Words of Radiance because I struggled.
That
was the one I actually gave Way of Kings like 3.5 stars, and then I've read Words of Radiance and I really didn't like it. Yeah. And then I tried Read Oathbringer and I just read the first couple of chapters. I was like, really, this isn't worth it. Like
don't put yourself through it if you're not liking it. They're too long, and I think that's almost a challenge, right? Like Sanderson can write and write and write, and he publishes big books that I think are not garbage regularly. But I think if you're struggling in a book that's like 48 hours long on audiobook, like it's hard to keep a tight narrative structure going through that many pages.
I went to Barnes and Noble to pick up the new Juliet Merlier novel. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy that works at this Barnes & Noble where I live, and he is like a huge fantasy fan, but he reads like the type of fantasy that like I just don't. And every time I go there, he like tries to talk to me about it, and I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like I don't read Raymond Feist, I don't read Sanderson. Like I don't know what to talk to you about. Like
we're reading different things, man.
But I went to pick up the Juliet Merlier novel, and he was working the cash register, and I was like, "Oh God!" And then he scanned it, and he was like, "Have you read any Sanderson?" I was like, "Oh God, why is this happening to me?"
Like, can I refer you to like one of my most popular YouTube videos? Yes, I've read Sanderson. Let's not talk about it.
Because it's hard in real life. Because in real life, I can't like be super honest and be like,
it's garbage.
I think he's like complete trash, like saying, then I'm rude, but then I don't want to lie and be like I've not read him, because then this guy talks a lot, and so it's just like an invitation for him to evangelize to me. So I don't want to do that, and so then I don't also want to say, oh yeah, I loved it, because then it's also inviting a conversation. So like I'm just like at a loss for words to like not have this conversation.
You're like traumatized. You can't go into your own bookstore.
I was like, I'm ordering books online from now on.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't have like, there is a local bookstore in town. It's like there is an independent. It was started as like a children's bookstore, children's and cookbooks, which was a very weird thing, which has since grown into like a more rounded out store.
Is it Chapters?
No, like this is a small, small independent, because I live in like a small town. And I love that place, but it doesn't have like a ton of stuff. Like I would never go there expecting them to have a book like it's a browse kind of store.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Baka Phoenix in Toronto?
No.
Okay. Well, it's a science fiction and fantasy bookstore in Toronto. And I visited it when I was visiting Toronto, and it was phenomenal. Like probably the best bookstore I've ever been in my entire life. And it's just a genre bookstore, and the top floor of it is all new books, or not newly published.
You told me about this.
And then downstairs is a used bookstore.
Yeah.
And it's really a phenomenal selection.
I tell you, I don't go to Toronto very often. Like I lived there for years, not years, but like 4 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And now when I go back, like I sometimes have to go in for meetings for like a professional organization that I was elected to, but I like go in on the train, go to my all day meeting, get back on the train and leave because I'm like, I cannot handle this anymore.
I have found Toronto really navigable
Yeah.
and very friendly, and probably
Yep.
the best large city I've ever visited in my life. And I loved
It's like it's a lovely place.
the
Totally.
streetcars or trams or whatever you call
Yeah.
them. It was so easy to get around, and they were cheap. It
Yeah.
was like the cheapest public transit I've ever been on.
Which is funny because I remember like over the course of when I lived there, like your Metro Pass, like your, like your monthly all access thing, it just kept going up in price. And I remember now, like before, if I go and I know I have to take public transit, I look up the prices again because they've changed, like from
Mm.
what I remember. And I'm like alarmed at how expensive it is. But yeah, it's such a luxury. It's really easy. It's a really easy like grid layout
Yeah.
for navigation and stuff. So yeah, it's a nice place. It's just like there's too many people.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it. I would like to go back as soon as the pandemic ends.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't travel anyway.
All right. So, do we want to get into
I think we should.
The Sympathizer by Viet Tien? And I meant to look this up. How do you say that last name?
I think it's Newen.
Newen? Okay, that's what I thought as well. So I just want to get this out before we start. I loved this book. I really, really liked it. And it's one that I kind of want to reread, knowing the information we know at the end, at
Mhm,
the beginning.
mhm.
So I'll try and give the best little summary I can. This book is about a man who I'm pretty sure is never named. Is his name ever spoken in the book?
Oh, that's a good point.
I don't
I
think
don't
he
think
ever
so.
is. And in fact, even
Do
on
everything.
the back of the book, they just call him the narrator. They don't ever name him on the
It's weird
blurb of
that
the book.
I never thought of that, but also that no other character through dialogue is forced to name him.
Yeah, I know. Because
Interesting.
I kept waiting for the name to come
Faces.
out, but I'm pretty sure Ewan. Okay, that makes sense. Um, so he is a double agent for the communists in North Vietnam. He works as a staff member for this general in the South Vietnamese army, and he at the beginning of the book, Saigon is falling, and he is forced to flee with the South Vietnamese that he's been staying with to the United States. And the rest of the book, the back of the book makes it sound like it's going to be more of a traditional spy thriller than it actually is. The rest
Yeah.
of the book is like kind of about his time in the U.S. It's about the different things that kind of like happen to him. There is no like real linear plot. I mean, there is. It's all chronological, but like it's like it's like oh, here's the thing that happens to him when he goes to work on a film. Here's the thing that happens to him when he has to like kill these people because of like these false allegations that he has to create and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
never really felt like there was one like overarching mystery to the book or one overarching like kind of thread. It was all like, okay, this is what's happening to him now that he's in the United States, still trying to like maintain his communist double agent cred, while
Yeah.
also clearly having some sort of affinity for like American life and American culture and like the people he's working with. Like the title of the book, The Sympathizer, is really apt
Yeah.
um, because of the way that he sympathizes with everyone that he comes across with um, in the U.S. And all these different spaces that he's like forced to occupy and also blend in seamlessly. Um, and so the book kind of builds to this rousing conclusion when he's forced to go back to Laos and the Laos border of Vietnam, where they've been funding this kind of militia group that's still making some sort of resistance as the Vietnamese Republic, and has to come to a head with the people that he's supposedly been working for. And we learn a little bit more about this mystery that, at the end of the book that was revealed at the beginning, involving a woman who died with some paper mache in her mouth that enlisted him as a double agent. So that's the book. It's really
That's
a
the book.
weird book. It was
It
not at
is weird.
all what I was expecting in
I
terms of its plot structure or anything, but I absolutely loved it. And Ron is bringing up a good point that most of the people in this book are not named. Like they're given titles or
Yeah.
nicknames.
But did you
Um,
notice how like Homeric it was? Like so the couple, because it happens over and over again, right? Like each character, my dog is losing his mind. Each character has like an adjective describing them, and then their like position or
Yes.
their job kind of thing. And it felt like in Homer where like Achilles is always referred to a certain way, and because it made sense like poetically, like in the structure, like my mind just kept going back there, which was like kind of random and makes no sense in a book like this, but it was just like what I thought about. And I wondered if it was kind of a way to make things more memorable or make them like, because they have no name, like to give them a bit more of like a story. I don't know.
I don't know. I find that aspect interesting. I actually having the names be kind of like their titles or nicknames or their attributes actually
Mhm.
helped me kind of keep everybody
Yes.
straight and
Yes.
really
Me too.
fixed in my mind. And I wonder if that hadn't been the case, if those characters would have bled together in some ways, because a lot of them occupy very similar spaces in society
Yeah.
and like attitudes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways it really helped the reading experience.
For me, for
I
sure.
I was very much at the very beginning of this book unsold, and in fact, I was really struggling, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it at all because I found the beginning of the book to be one really confusing. I don't know a ton about the Vietnam War and the fall of
Yeah, me
Saigon,
either.
and so I was not prepared for how much information was being thrown at me at the beginning. And so I was really feeling my ignorance as a barrier to engaging with the book.
Me
But
too.
then as it goes on, it helps, it kind of feeds you more information, I think, and it makes
Yeah.
everything feel more things start to really hone in and focus more on the character. I was surprised by how emotionally attached I got to this narrator. Because at the beginning of the book, I was like, he is so flat, he's so dry. But as you read on, you're like, wow, like actually not really. There's a lot going on with him, and a
Yeah.
lot going on with his story and his childhood. And I loved learning about all of that. And then as the book goes on, there's all this really interesting commentary that he makes about the West and Western culture and stuff like that. Heidi is bringing up that she felt the opposite, that she was hooked at the beginning and gradually lost interest, and then
I was
regained
the
it towards the
same.
end. Oh, that's interesting. I
Yeah. I
I
was the
think
same,
my
Heidi.
favorite part of this book was in the middle. When it was doing the film stuff, which I'll get to in just a second, but my cat is freaking out and wants out of this room, so I'm going to go let him out real quick.
Okay. I'll just keep chatting.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, Heidi, I was totally the same as you. So I did this thing that I typically do with book club, which is that at the beginning of the month, I'm like all gung ho and start the book. And I'm like, I'm going to read it more evenly this month. And then I never read it evenly at all. And so I had like a 3-week gap between the first like 130 pages and then like the rest of the book that I finished in the last couple of days, like including this morning. But yeah, I was hooked from the beginning and was just like, I think there were things about the book at the beginning that were off-putting. The way he like approaches women in particular and thinks about things. There were a couple turns of phrases like from the author that I was like, this feels like a debut. In some places, the writing felt a little clunky, like smart, but like obviously smart, like knew it was being kind of,
That's kind of a good point. I definitely felt that in the writing as
yeah,
well. Well, this is a debut,
it is a debut, and I mean,
right?
it won the
Yeah.
Pulitzer, right? So oh my God, my dogs are gonna be, we're gonna have animal troubles today. Um, yeah, it just felt like there were a couple moments where like he, as an author, like caught on a phrase or something and was like, I'm brilliant, I'm putting this in the book. And it is
Yeah.
brilliant, but it was like
Eh,
obvious.
but I think that kind of fits with the character in some ways, though,
I
because I
think so
think the
too.
character is
Yeah.
also very aware of his intellect, very proud of his intellect,
Yeah.
and all that different stuff.
Yeah.
The film was very out of context. Did I miss something about the film being out of context when I was letting the cat out?
No, no. I think Zan's just like
Oh.
referring to the apocalypse now, like it kind of like pointing its fun at itself. Oh my God,
Mm.
dogs, please do not chew each other.
There were so many passages in this book that I like read several times, and I just want to share one that like I literally read out loud to myself several times. I forced my parents to listen to me read it to them. So like, this is the most brilliant paragraph you're going to hear like in a long time, and it's when he's going to the film writer's house, and the film writer's of course just expecting him to kind of put this, like, rubber stamp of approval on things, And of course, that's not what happens. And I just had to like read. This is like kind of one of the ending paragraphs. And it's after he's getting done talking to him about like some of the mistakes that he made. And he goes, "Let me tell you a secret," the auteur said. "You ready? Here it is. No one gives a shit. He was amused by my wordlessness. To see me without words is like seeing one of those Egyptian felines without hair, a rare and not necessarily desirable occasion. Only later, driving away from his house, could I laugh bitterly about how he had bludgeoned me into silence with my own weapon of choice. How could I be so dense? How could I be so deluded? Ever the industrious student, I had read the screenplay in a few hours, and then reread and written notes for several more hours, all under the misguided idea that my work mattered. I naively believed that I could divert the Hollywood organism from its goal, the simultaneous lobotomization and pickpocketing of the world's audiences. The ancillary benefit was strip mining history, leaving the real history in the tunnels along with the dead, doling out tiny, sparkling diamonds for audiences to gasp over. And then the other part of it that's like awesome.
Chris came with receipts again.
He goes, I pitied the French for their naivety in believing they had to visit a country in order to exploit it. Hollywood was much more efficient, imagining the countries that wanted to exploit. Um, It says his arrogance marked something new in the world, for this was the first war where the losers would write history instead of the victors, courtesy of the most efficient propaganda machine ever created, with all due respect to Joseph Goebbels and the Nazis, who never achieved global domination. Best paragraph ever. Like, I was so blown away.
I think
It was
there's so much that
awesome.
just sells this book, right? And like I read, I don't know, I assume we have the same copy, but there's like a piece that he wrote for the New York
I do,
Times.
yeah, and I didn't read them. I was like gonna save them for a treat.
I
Those articles.
did. And then
Did you
there's
get
a
like them?
Q&A as well. And I did find both of them pretty illuminating in terms of what the author felt like he was trying to do with the book.
Hmm.
And reframing the conversation about the Vietnam War, the war as he
Yeah.
would call it. Again, I think partly because I don't have such an ingrained knowledge, right? I think he's writing from the context of like the Vietnam War in America is seen kind of in a very specific way, and this book is meant to subvert that
Mm.
kind of main narrative. Because I don't have like a main narrative in my head, like my knowledge of the Vietnam War is very sparse. And I think the stuff that I know about it is more kind of like the backlash in America to the war, like the kind of
Mm.
social
Yeah,
American
exactly.
social repercussions of the war. And so it's not that I felt like I was missing something or that I lost something, but I feel like maybe the impact would have been greater um, had I known more about things, I guess. And also, this book was written, what, in 2016,
Yep.
2015, 2016.
Hmm.
And I feel like the publishing industry has changed quite a bit in the last 5 years in terms of what kinds of stories are being told and what's getting published. And at the
Interesting.
time, I can't help but think that this would have been even more of a gut punch in that
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot kind of being told from, he says in, I think it's in the interview, I can't remember if it's in the interview, I think it is, but basically saying that he didn't want to let anybody off the hook. And there's this great thing about like we didn't there, I'm going to get the quote wrong, and I also don't want to swear on a live thing on your channel, but
Oh, you're
like,
totally fine.
well, we don't want, like, we don't need the Americans to come and screw us over because we can screw ourselves over just fine,
Yes,
thanks.
yes, yes. At the end
Right.
of the
And
book, when
so,
it was a great quote.
yeah, so there's like laying the blame like at French imperial ambitions feet and at Vietnamese feet and at Americans feet, and just saying like everybody did awful things here, nobody gets off the hook, nobody gets away with it. Like, I thought that was a really kind of powerful way to structure the book. It feels very modern, right? It
Yeah.
feels like I never want to say like post-colonial, but that kind of thing where we're like much more willing, I think, to live in the gray areas of things and to say, like, to acknowledge complexity when we see it in some
Well,
ways,
it's
which
kind
is
of amazing
kind of
because I mean,
cool.
throughout the book, actually, I found myself really rooting for the VC, for the Communist Party, and then as the book went on, and then when they finally make it there and he's tortured, I was like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me! Like, this is the man who's
Yep.
like been rooting for this for a long time now.
And
And then
the rampant corruption throughout, right? That in the like, again, there's another great line kind of at the end where the guy's saying, like, isn't it great what money can do, like, even in, this communist state that we've got going? Like, yeah, it was just, I always love the what comes next thing about revolution, about major upheaval, because it's one thing to like fight a war and to make a change, and then it's another thing to see what happens after that change. And I think those are always the more interesting bits.
Yeah, I agree. Oh man, my thought is like gone.
Sorry.
Totally good. Um, I was really surprised actually when it was kind of revealed that the woman had been, and trigger warning for the next part of this conversation. Obviously, if you read the book, you know this is probably coming. That the woman that he had discovered with the paper in her mouth had been raped. That reveal at the end was really kind of a gut punch, because I kept thinking to myself, like, what are they wanting him to confess to? And I was getting really angry that they were continuing to beat him. And then when it's revealed, it's like, oh, actually, like, maybe a beating was deserved, or at least, or at least, it was like obvious, like, these people knew what he had done because she escaped, and like that passage was actually, I was uncomfortable, because like I kind of wish that there were more female narratives in this book that were not
Yeah.
Sexualized.
Yeah.
So I was there was a part of me that was kind of disappointed, but then the other part that just made complete sense. I don't know.
I think it's one of those things where, like, so again, the whole book is told from this kind of confessional perspective.
Yes, which I loved.
And I wouldn't want to conflate the author's views by any stretch with this character, right? So the character, he's very much a product of the time and a place that he lived.
I love the fact that he feels. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, my brain.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think it is discussed, especially in the later parts of the book, and maybe in some of the commentary that I read after, about the sexualization of Vietnamese women, not only by like American soldiers, but by the Vietnamese themselves. And again, sharing that blame and saying that we're all part of this situation was, I think, important. And I also was like really taken. So there's two moments where we're dealing with rape in the book, right? The one is in the movie, and very explicitly, like, the comment is like, very few people got to see that scene. Our main character only saw that scene when he went to see the movie in theaters, whatever. So it's like an unseen atrocity. And then you get this rape scene at the end of the book where it's in the movie theater, right? These interrogations happen in this like movie theater kind of setting. And then we see it happen. And there's, I mean, this kind of, I don't want to say it sounds so awful. This classic scene where like he can see her as it's happening kind of at the end, and she's kind of given up on things. Like there's this really, it's so brutal and so visceral. And like, I thought just a great juxtaposition of like, it almost felt in the first one, like that people wanted to see it being filmed kind of thing, right? Like there was that kind of like undertone to it all. And then in the later part where he's like being tortured for like a year, right? He does see it, and it's horrific and kind of ruins him in some ways too. Like I thought that was all really interesting.
Well, and I thought too, it really made his resistance to that scene make sense, knowing, because like he said, oh, don't you think that's a bit on the nose to the guy? And the guy's like, well, this is war, this is what happens. And then when he's in the movie theater and he's watching it, and he's put in that same position that he's put with the woman. I thought, oh, that was really just so like emotionally constructed in a way that I thought elevated the book more than other aspects of the book, which felt at times often quite detached and aloof,
which I always find powerful. Detached writing for me in the face of like atrocity, I find sometimes, we talked about this, I think, with The End of Days too, I find that to be more impactful at times than a really intimate like experience, where people are looking at I agree, but I think that kind of like detached kind of view of things,
Sarah,
it just like it works. And I think, I mean, a lot of what happens in this book is the narrator sort of detaching from himself, which culminates in that experience he has while being tortured. But the whole time there's like communist versus democratic. There's the North versus the South. There's America versus Vietnam. There's so many dualities. And as, like, again, spoilers, but I thought it was really interesting that he's killed 2 people who now are haunting him, right? They're ghosts that sort of like provide commentary as he's going through these delirious torture scenes in particular, though it starts happening before that, but they really come to the forefront during that torture scene. And so you see this like constant, he's moving away from himself and away from himself. And I think there's a lot of truth to the idea of a character who, gets involved. We see this in so many different things, right? Somebody who gets involved with a cause and becomes disillusioned with it over time because it doesn't work out the way they thought it was going to, or it's not perfect, right? And you see this like growing detachment. And then at the end, he's literally trying to like put his 2 selves back together and become a whole person, which I thought that was all interesting.
It's funny because I don't think he ever became disillusioned. Right. I mean, I think ideologically he remains pretty committed, but he's become so far removed from the actual revolution.
And he comes home to find like, his side is now, is he part of that anymore? Yeah. I think maybe it's not addressed explicitly and maybe I'm reading into things, but I think there's some of that, again, to see the what comes next piece, like after the thing happens, to see all the fallout from it. I think you can't help but feel like is this what we fought for? Is this what the ending was supposed to be? Yeah. And I think you have to feel in almost any scenario some disappointment with that.
Well, it's funny because you get a lot of commentary on both sides about who the people are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so there's I'm trying to remember, there was this conversation about art and the importance for art and revolution. Mm-hmm. That art was good for the people. And I loved that, especially because I don't know exactly. I think he remains ideologically communist, right? I mean, I don't think he really ever changes that. But I think watching him go through who the people are, that conversation following his mind there was really cool.
Yeah, I think
I don't know if I expressed that well. I feel like I butchered that, but it made sense in my brain.
I think Zan's comment is kind of like, it nails it on the head, right? Like that, I think he is torn. And it's funny because when he does go into this prison torture scene, the accusation is made that the feeling is that he's become too Western, right? He's been infiltrated. Mm-hmm. He now sympathizes with the West, but he doesn't. You're right. It's not that he's ever like, oh, I've come to America and it's great. And I was wrong about communism. Like, that's not what happens. But I think he becomes so blurred and so gray, and he doesn't make a lot of clear-cut political statements. So we know at the beginning of the book, we know where he's coming from, who he's infiltrating, and what the work is, but he's never like tries to sell anybody on the communist idea. He never fights for anything. He's sort of just a pawn the whole time and is just like a player in a much bigger game. Like, I feel like he's kind of out of his depth a lot of the time, but doesn't know it.
He almost never really even talks about like communist ideology or anything like that.
No.
He's, I don't know. It's very interesting. I also loved at the end of the book when they're talking about what he's done wrong. Yeah. And very little of what he's done wrong has actually been things he did. It's been how he's chosen to present himself. The fact that he wrote in such a way that felt bourgeois and elitist rather than anti-capitalist. Right. And then I love what he says to the interrogator. And he says, well, do you think that Marx was writing for the people when he wrote Das Kapital? I mean, it was such a good line because of course not. I mean, Das Kapital is quite complicated.
It's an intellectual treatise. I also never thought that I would come across dialectic materialism again in my life, but I can very clearly picture a professor drawing a diagram of how it works in communist revolutionary thinking, and I was like, oh, what a great callback to my life. But yeah, I think it's funny how much is in the book. It was very readable. It was plotty in a lot of ways. And yet I feel I think that last section really sells the book for me. It really
That
solidifies,
was a
like,
great ending.
proves what the author had been trying to do the whole time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love the ending so much.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
and
with a
it's
weaker ending, it would have been a weaker book for sure.
yeah, and I also love the part at the very end. It's like the last couple pages. But it's arranged for him to be one of the boat people.
Yeah.
And he's talking about like all the different backgrounds of everybody that was on the boat,
Hmm.
and he's like, it didn't matter because at the end we were just the boat people. And it was
Yeah.
just such a powerful line because, like, you think about all these different people and all these different factions and like all these all these different conflicts that they're presented with. You see this book, I mean, full of Vietnamese people who disagree on so much, who have so many different complex ideas, who have such
Hmm.
various backgrounds, but then in their migration to the West, they become homogenized. And it was
Yeah.
just
And
really a powerful line.
yeah, and I think it's interesting because the author, I think, grew up, I think he says, in California somewhere.
Mhm.
Like, he grows up in one of these communities. He grows up in the diaspora, and like, he talks about, I think it's in the opinion piece that he did, about, like, he ate Vietnamese food. He went to like Vietnamese church. He learned the language. Like, he was as immersed in like Vietnamese culture as an American as you could be. But you're right. Like, they go from being, like any society, like any
Mhm.
culture, very complex, lots of different ideas, to being lumped together physically, typically in one kind of big location. And then, yeah, just become two Americans. They would just become, oh, like the Vietnamese over there,
Yeah.
right? Like, they're just one thing. And I think that's always a powerful statement when we talk about war and conflict, right? Like, it's just humanity. It's just humanity doing all this crap to themselves. You can make whatever little divisions you want, like, oh, it's a Vietnamese communist, it's an American, like, whatever you want to
Mhm.
say about it. It's all just, it's sort of irrelevant at the end of the day when you're trying to escape with your life on a boat in like a very dicey escape plan. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, right? None of that crap matters. But we kill
Yeah.
ourselves over it.
Yeah. It was I just thought it was a phenomenal book. Like, I really can't stop thinking about it. It's gonna be one I really want to
Yeah.
reread it because I feel like I missed so much. Um, just
Somebody was talking about the sequel in the Discord, which I
there's
didn't look too much into.
I did know that he had a new book, but I didn't know. I
Which one, guys in the chat, which one is the sequel? Is it The Refugees or is it something else?
think it's the refugees or the. Actually, it might be the committed.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It came out way earlier. I didn't know there was a
Yes,
sequel.
it
Like,
is
until
the
somebody
sequel.
mentioned it in Discord, I didn't realize that there was a sequel.
The
And I think,
committed is the sequel.
oh, I think somebody in Discord said like they didn't feel like there was a need for a sequel, and I think I agree with that. Like, I
I
don't want to
know.
break the book.
There's part of me that almost like doesn't. I like the ending of him on this voyage, right? I like that
Not
kind
knowing what's
of
going to happen.
yeah, I mean, he's somebody who's lived his life on the knife's edge, right?
Yeah,
And so to end it there, I think makes sense.
yeah,
Um, but at the same time, I would want to know more of what he's gotten into, right? I mean, I can't help that kind of curiosity. So I think that's a testament to the strength of the characterization, actually, by the end. Because at the beginning, I was really not sold on him as a character and quite bored by him, to be honest.
yeah.
And then as the book went on, I just really loved him.
Yeah, I did like him from the beginning, but I think having it was funny how it felt like a movie at the beginning, right? We get dropped in
Yeah,
on the
really
day of
cinematic.
exile kind of thing, right? Where it's like a big action sequence. Who's going to make this plane? Who gets a seat on the plane? And then trying to get through Saigon to the airport, and like there's a the tarmac scene where people are shooting. Like, it felt very cinematic in some ways, and
And
all of that I liked. I was still just trying to figure out, like, okay, who's who knows what, like, just still trying to get my bearings though.
I think it would have helped a little bit if we had had more characterization prior to that scene, just because, like,
Mm,
for example, when what happens to Bond's wife and kid,
yeah,
I didn't know Bond, I didn't care.
yeah,
Like, you know what I'm saying? It felt, and then as you get to know Bond, then you kind of care more about like the tragedy that happened, and maybe if that had been inverted, the emotional impact of that scene would have been greater for me.
hmm,
Um, but I did like I liked that. I don't know. I guess like for a lot of Americans, I guess like we consider almost like the fall of Saigon to just be like the end of the war,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's just where we ended it.
We
That
left.
yeah,
Goodbye.
where in reality, it goes on for these people, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the same thing is happening now in Afghanistan.
Yep.
Um, so it's a really it's a take on history that really forces you to recontextualize, which I really like.
Yeah, and I think that that's the thing that is powerful about the book is that recontextualization of all of the players involved and of thinking of it as like again kind of a more complex whole concept that it wasn't even just in Vietnam, right? That like fighting was happening in other places. And yeah, it's a thing that I just need to know more about because I felt like I could have gotten more out of the book. Like not that I didn't love it and get a lot out of it, and I feel like I learned stuff too.
Hmm.
But I could see like learning a ton more about this and then coming back to the book and being like, "Oh, right. Like that sentence or that paragraph that I read and like thought I understood, I didn't really kind of get the full gist of."
Mm-hmm. So I was reading comments.
Yeah, Ron, I think Ron too. Like yeah, it's
Yeah, I was making a lot of like Afghanistan comparisons in my brain, which I mean,
mhm,
it's hard not to be honest, because I mean, you had even like prior to the US departure from Afghanistan, they were asking Biden like, we're not going to see what we saw in Saigon, are we? And all this different stuff. So I mean, the comparisons have already been made in the media, and there's definitely a case to be made of how apt the comparisons are. Um, yeah, I found it very interesting. And it made me want to read more about the Vietnam War because,
me
like I said,
too.
most of like my knowledge of the Vietnam War is about the draft. It's
Hmm.
about the initial start of the Vietnam War. I know, and
Yeah,
about napalm bombing,
yeah,
how horrific the napalm bombing was. Um, and Agent Orange. Like those are like the four things that like ring in my brain about the Vietnam War.
yeah.
But the actual like ending of it, aftermath, like that type of thing, I know very little about, and it made me really want to
Well, and the political
um,
intricacies are lost on
read
me.
more. Yeah, I would
Right, like
say
I
so
have
as
a
well.
very like black and white like
I mean, it made me realize I was like, I mean, I knew Ho Chi Minh was the president, but then I didn't know how he died and all that different stuff. So it made me
yeah.
realize how little about the war I actually knew, which is
That's
always kind of
interesting.
embarrassing.
Heidi, can I ask, like, what level of schooling did it get taught at? So, like, I'm Canadian, and it was not, I don't think it was taught in high school even here. And then in university, I did a history degree, but like, I chose my courses, right? So I did 20th century American history. But again, I think it focused more on like the impact that Vietnam had politically and socially in America than it did on like the details of the war in Vietnam.
Yeah,
And that was an elective course.
say in the U.S., like I mean, I only took U.S. history in high school. I never took it in college. But in the U.S., it's primarily talked about in terms of the like Nixon administration.
Yeah.
And it's talked about primarily in terms of like the resistance to it, the anti-war sentiments and stuff
Right.
like
Yeah.
that,
Draft dodgers.
draft
Like,
dodgers,
yeah.
all that different stuff.
Well, and I think it
You
gets
know,
very much wrapped up in like the late 60s, early 70s, like social movements. It gets wrapped up in kind of bigger forces in American history. But again, I feel like I've lost the whole like Asian theater. Like, this is a thing, right? Asian history was not taught at all in school. Like, even World War II, we got very little of
mm,
the Pacific theater, as even in university. In university, I went to a very small college, and there were almost, I think, no Asian history courses at all taught, or African or South American.
wow.
And I focused on very much like European history. I took a bunch of Canadian history because there were courses offered, but like I don't remember it and I didn't care at the time, to be honest.
Mm,
And I took some American history and that kind of stuff. So it was very like this is like a post university interest of mine. But I think I've mentioned a couple times in various like contexts, like either on my channel or here or whatever. Like I always feel like I need the historical background to understand a thing properly. And so like kind of piecing together Korean history first, I'm working on Chinese history and like kind of moving my way out, because I just have no cultural understanding for like so much of what happens in Asia. And like Definitely with this book, right? And I think I said it on the last live show going into it that I was worried that that would be a problem. I don't think it stopped me from understanding the book, but I definitely, like I said, felt like I missed out on some things.
Yeah, I totally agree, and then I agree with Dan too. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm afraid a little bit to look up like nonfiction stuff because I don't want like the Kissinger
Yeah.
account of the Vietnam War.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I loved it though. It's one that I want to like go back. What I want to do is I want to go find a really good like Vietnam War nonfiction book, and then go back and reread this. Like this is getting reread. I absolutely
It's gonna
rereading it.
happen. I'm looking up what the heck is that book that I have on my shelf that I think is about Vietnam but might not be, and I'm trying to Google it now.
I don't know.
Come on, guys.
Everyone, what's on
Jessica's shelf that she hasn't read? Oh yeah, no, Matterhorn.
Oh, by Marlantes or whatever.
Yeah, I have had Matterhorn on my shelf for like a decade. I don't expect it. Yeah, I don't expect it to be nuanced particularly.
I don't think it is.
But I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah, I know. I listened to the podcast Literary Disco, which is like the greatest.
Oh yeah, you told me about that.
And Ryder Strong, Boy Meets World guy, loves Matterhorn, but it always sounds to me like I'm a little bit afraid that it would be like that movie in the book actually, because I think it very much is about like the American soldiers experience.
Well, it is because he was one. So I'm reading a little bit of a blurb here. He said, so this, I'm on NPR. It says, we've all seen at some point the Vietnam War dramatized on television or acted out in film, but it's impossible, of course, for anyone who wasn't there to fully gauge the horror and violence that American and Vietnamese soldiers encountered every minute of every day. In his debut novel, Matterhorn, Vietnam combat vet attempts to transport his readers to 1969 in the jungle near Laos, just south of the Vietnamese demilitarized zone, where a company of U.S. Marines are fighting for their lives in a war none of them really understands. So I think there's a thing here where, like, I would not want him to, this classic problem in publishing of white people trying to say they understand the experience of somebody who is not them.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's talking about, if he's going to approach this from like a critical American perspective, where like there's a whole bunch of American soldiers over there fighting for something they do not understand at all and are like, why are we here and dying for this thing? And they don't agree with it. Like, I'm interested in a nuanced understanding of the American war from an American perspective if it's done well. And this book gets such high praise.
Yeah, no,
it's also very long.
It's huge. It's like 600 pages or something.
I think it's more. I mean, depending on how thick the pages are.
Yeah, he wrote a new book that came out a couple years ago called Deep River, I think.
Yep. Yeah. He also wrote What It's Like to Go to War. Like, I don't think he's writing from the rah patriotic America camp.
Yeah, I don't think
he's writing it from like, these are the realities of war that I experienced kind of camp. So I don't know. I hope it's okay. Also, can I just say, like, this is like totally a job related thing, but doing a Google search for this, we finally got a thing to work where it's recommending like our library's copies of this to borrow from a Google search. Only been trying to get that to work for like 3 years. Yeah, it's definitely, oh geez. It's, Vietnam is like, it's on my list of things to get to. Like, I still haven't read She Who Became the Sun because I want to finish the Chinese history stuff that I'm working on. I randomly decided this month to learn Korean. Finally, I've been watching Korean television for like a decade, and have decided to start putzing with, like, I don't know. It's
you could practice with Mel
on my list. Oh yeah. She's I saw she did. Yeah. It's funny how the comparison that I make is to Game of Thrones, where if you liked Game of Thrones before it was adapted for television, you're like, no, but I liked it before, like everybody liked it. I feel the same about Korean stuff because I'm like, no, but like I bought my first BTS album at like a different K-pop concert. Like, I've been doing this for a lot of years. So yeah, all of it to say that like I have a lot of interest in different elements of Asian history now that I sort of have some starting place, and this book really made me want to keep going, like into, because I know basically nothing about Vietnam.
Yeah, Ron
about a lot of countries.
Got a good fiction to recommend. Drop in the screen. Yes, please do, Ron.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm already looking up like more books to read. Oh, I could read the James Patterson Walk in My Combat Boots.
That'll be top tier, 5 stars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
should be so
you know
pretentious.
what, I really appreciate books that like, I mean, make you want to reread them. I reread so little, which is funny because we're going to talk about Lines of Alrasan in a sec, but like I reread so little generally, so I can't say that I'm going to come back to this at any point, but like books that inspire you to learn more and to read more, I think are like really successful in their own way. Whether or not
Yeah.
you like the book itself, which I did.
Yeah. No, I
But I
really
think
want to
that's
reread this
helpful.
one because this is definitely one. I think there's so much information in it that I don't think you
Mhm.
can just read it once and like absorb everything.
Probably not. And
I don't think so. I
I
mean,
think for me, it'll be a case of a wait, right? Wait, learn more, and then come back and maybe do it on audio or something.
yeah. Well, the audio is pretty good. I listened to a sample,
Yeah.
and I was pretty impressed with the narration.
Awesome.
Um, shall we talk about Lions Alrasan since you brought it up? It is our October pick, and it's Jessica. Would you say this is like your favorite fantasy book?
It's like probably pretty close. So we were chatting a little bit in Discord this morning because I pulled out my copy
Hey,
this morning.
let's see the beautiful copy.
Oh,
We're all jealous.
like you can't. Somebody else got this, not in the hardcover. I think they had a trade paper in the same
Uh,
cover. So I
the
read the
eBay I
prologue
go.
again this morning, and I was like kind of weepy reading the prologue because I can so clearly picture the final scenes of this book. It's nostalgic for me. I don't reread, and I had a friend recommend because I was struggling this month to get back into reading after like a crazy couple of weeks, and she's like, "What about a comfort read?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't really have comfort reads, but like I do, but it's mostly Guy K, and I think it's mostly this book and maybe the Sarantine Mosaic duology, but like." It sounds like people are
How
liking it so far. Ron's liking it, I know for sure. He mentioned in the Discord, and
Ron.
I yeah,
How would you compare it to Tigana?
a stronger story.
Okay, good. Because
I've
I
only read Tagana
struggled.
once. Yeah,
I struggled.
I've only read Tagana once. I've read this. This will be probably my fourth time reading it.
I'm starting it
Um,
tonight. I'm really excited.
yeah, and I did note in the Discord this morning that his books are all set in the same fantasy universe.
Oh,
So
really?
this is going to be in the same universe, I think, as Tagana, and I'm going to get some of the books wrong. But there's a whole bunch of them that like they have the same. So there's like the Jews, the Christians, the Muslim, like
Hmm.
his alternate like words for all of these groups and like all of the geographic places and stuff are all consistent across these books. So if you read this and then go read like the Sarantine Mosaic, they're referred to in the same way, which is helpful.
Okay. Uh, I love like alternative history fantasy. Like that's like kind of my jam, and I've
Hmm.
discovered how much I've enjoyed it since reading the Jacqueline Carey novels,
Hmm.
which also do a lot of alternative history.
Yeah,
Very different books, I'm sure, but I just have
they're
been
very
obsessing.
different. Yes.
Um,
This is very literary. Like I think so I spoke to Guy. He was nominated for an award that I was on the committee for, and I fought so hard for that book to be included in the long list. And we all got, like, all of us, the readers, got to partner with an author, right, to kind of lead them through the process. Like, here's what we need from
okay.
you. Here's what we need from your agent, etc. And I was like, mine, right? And he talked about how we were just chatting in email, and he talked about how, you know, typically the popular vote isn't with him, but literary, he does well with like literary critics, right? These are very literary historical fantasies,
Um,
which
have
I'm
you,
like so down for.
have you read his Fiona of Our Tapestry?
Yes.
Did you like it?
Not really.
Okay, just curious. 'Cause that's always the one that like even fans of his are like not a bit keen on.
There's somebody, oh gosh, was it Natalie in the Discord said she had just finished it and loved it, the
Interesting.
whole trilogy. And so I'm like, okay, so you're probably going to be great for these because yeah, I think you're right, Chris. Like myself, certainly, and some others. It was the first of his that I read, and
I know
he like starts there.
Leo at A Little Book Life.
Mm-hmm.
He posted his fantasy bookshelf tour, which, by the way, if you're like a fantasy fan, I highly recommend you go check out that video because the man has the most impressive fantasy collection I've ever seen in my entire life.
Amazing.
But he was saying that he didn't really recommend the Fiona of Our Tapestry, even though he's a big GGK fan.
I think it's just that thing where it's like the first trilogy that he wrote, and you can see a lot of the themes and ideas that he's going to play with in later books start there. But I don't think it's a perfect story. It's like, and it's different, right? It's about 5 university students that are on the U of T campus that get sucked into like an alternate fantasy universe.
Which, isn't Isabel also kind of like that?
Apparently. And Isabel's one of the ones that like I did read. I've read all of his books, but there's some that I have not gone back to that I'm keen to, and there's some that I have not gone back to that I'm not super keen on, and Isabel is one of them.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I need to read a lot more of his. I mean, I like I said, I only ever tried Tigana once. I wasn't a big fan of it, and I kind of like haven't
put it aside then. Yeah,
I set it aside. So, and I might try Tigana again at a different point in my life, and maybe I'll love it.
Maybe after you've read a couple of his others, right? Like if you read a couple and really love them, then sure. But if it's not your thing, like there's so many books out there, and I do this thing where I struggle to read books that I feel like I should read or I feel like I will love, but they're not really working. And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I don't really know.
With the Wheel of Time.
I'm going to get through it. Henry, stop. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that one. I'm starting it tonight. And
I'm glad that people are liking it. Like Heidi's liking it.
I think it's going to be excited. A hit.
I hope so, guys. Like, if it's okay, you guys don't. My feelings I will live through this if somebody doesn't like it.
Isabel is a soft sequel to Fiona.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, there's not a lot of portal fantasy for adults.
No. And definitely there are some really horrific scenes in Fiona of Arc trilogy, like later on, like some pretty like they are not books for young readers. But again, like there's so many things about it. Like I think he's really, as an author, really brilliant from like a literary structure standpoint and like literally weaving things through. Like it's about a tapestry, right? And it's about like weaving stories through. And I feel like that sort of idea from the original, from that trilogy just permeates the rest of his work. I can't wait. I can't wait for people to chat. I am going to read a bit more of it today. I got a bunch of other crap I've got to get done today, but like, I really want to get back to this soon. And then I hope everybody is like a GGK fanboy or fangirl and we'll read all of his other books and we can talk about them too.
I'm going to the Shenandoah Valley next week, so starting on the 9th. So I'll probably be reading some of it there. It'll be nice to be reading it on vacation.
Yeah, I'm going north to a friend's cottage for like just a couple, like 2.5, 3 days-ish kind of thing. And I bought myself, okay, this is awful. I realized this morning, my like live show setup is like my laptop in front of me and my DSLR on top, right? I bought myself a new iPad because this laptop is dying. And my iPad is also like has not been able to update for a couple of years. So I'm trading in my laptop and my iPad for a new iPad Air, which is like an iPad Pro, basically. Yeah. Love it. So excited. And I'm like, oh, this is what I'm going to bring to the cottage because I have all of my like NetGalley titles and I'm going to bring Lions of Alrasan as like my one physical book and like just do some cozy cottage type reading. But I'm realizing that I have no idea how I'm going to film, like how I'm going to do live show next month because I won't have a laptop. I have an iMac and a PC in like terrible filming locations. I'm gonna have to figure this out, guys. I'm like, oh crap. We'll see what the setup is like next month.
I don't know.
I know. But I'm excited to have the iPad and like
it'll be nice.
Want to like make some notes and crap because I'm gonna get the pencil.
Oh,
I know.
That'd be really cool.
I know. I'm such an Apple junkie.
I was until my MacBook like just took a crap on me and I was like, it's not worth it actually.
It's the kind of thing where and this is totally like their business strategy, right? Like as soon as you start having 1 or 2 Apple products, it makes sense to keep buying Apple products because they all work so seamlessly together. And then
I didn't realize how like crap just like video editing was on Apple on MacBook, to be honest, until I got because that's what I used to edit all my videos on was my MacBook. And then I got my current one, which is just an HP. And it's so much better for editing and uploading videos. Like it's insane.
Like I upgraded, so I have my MacBook Air, like my laptop, and then I have an iMac. And I upgraded my iMac a couple years ago for video editing because my old one just couldn't process things fast enough. But I never like got to the point in editing where I cared enough to like do it really well. So my like iMovie, as long as my computer could handle like buffering, like exporting speeds and everything, I didn't care. Yeah. Oh, yay, Heidi. Okay, can I just say, Heidi, though, like I ordered this sucker and it's like 2.5 weeks for delivery. I'm like, why is it going to
Shipping
take?
issues, man.
I know it is. It's totally that because they don't even have them available in stores. Like there's an Apple store probably like 35-minute drive for me. And I would have gone to pick up my order at the store if it had been available. It's not even available. And it's like, there's no customization. It's just like an iPad in a box.
It's
Can't get it.
It's kind of amazing. Like, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but like going to the grocery store nowadays, like it's amazing. Like, it's not like empty shelves or anything, but there's a lot missing, and like things that like I don't know. I'm just like been used to being able to go pick up at the store. It's like suddenly I can't get like the honey braided pretzels anymore, and like it's not like a worst thing that's happened in my life, but it's just like what
There's
the
just some
heck?
stuff
You know
missing.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's some weird like supply chain logistics.
when I went to Gen Con earlier this month, you would code demo games and it would be like a great game. You're like, can I buy it? No.
You may not have this thing.
Like it was every single game. I've never been to a Gen Con before where like so much was unavailable for sale.
Oh jeez. That's frustrating.
Yeah. It was all shipping issues. They're like, no, it's stuck on a crate in Singapore. Sorry.
Great. Yeah, it's funny how like that Suez issue, right? Like stopped global trade. One boat could shut down the world. Makes me a little fearful, right?
Yeah.
That one stuck boat can really just disrupt everything. Yeah. The pandemic's done some fun things, guys, but I'm hoping it arrives in time. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm very excited for Lions Valorson. I'm very excited to go back to fantasy, which is, my genre roots, and a lot of other people's genre roots on the chat. So very excited for that. And then after that, we have sci-fi in December and horror in November. So
God, I placed a hold on Hex this morning because I realized that it's a 16-week wait for the ebook. I think I'm gonna have to buy it. It's very cheap for like on like as a Kindle ebook. So I'll probably just buy it. But I'm so excited.
Pretty old because I remember when I first started watching BookTube, it was being talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
right. I'm sorry. I'm like I got lost in my brain there for a second. I started watching the Foundation adaptation on Apple Plus, which I'm so distraught to have a subscription to. To be honest, it's amazing.
Well, I've not read Foundation. I've not read any Asimov.
I have read Foundation. I don't think that it's without its own problems. Obviously, like women do exist, but the adaptation is brilliant. And so I'm hoping that the season will, by the time we get to sci-fi in December, like if there's people that want to chat about Foundation, if anybody else is watching it and wants to chat in the Discord, I would love to. Cause I'm just like, it's not even the story. It's like literally the set design, the production value. Like I've never seen a better designed sci-fi adaptation, I think, in my life. So good.
I finally visited a friend of mine that I've not seen in a really long time because of the pandemic, and then she moved house. So I went and visited her, and I was raiding her bookshelves, and she had Leviathan Wakes, which I tried on audiobook like a really long time ago, and didn't love the audiobook at all. And I don't know if it was like I didn't love the book because I didn't like the audio or what. So I'm going to try that one. I stole it from her shelves. So I'm going to try that one on physical when we read the Children of Time.
I like Leviathan Wakes.
I know you liked it a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. I mean, it's very popular.
Yeah.
So yes.
So much to look forward to. I'm terrified about Hex, but between Lions of Our Sand and Tchaikovsky in December, it's okay. I'm going to make it through.
Oh yeah.
Just burn right through the horror. It's going to be great.
Well, actually, if the horror novel is short enough, I don't mind because then I'm not like it can kind of blitz through the fear. Well, did you ever read The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters? How did that book scare you? That book scared you, right?
No.
Or am I alone? That book terrified me.
I think it's gothic and creepy for sure, but I don't think it's scary in the way that like true horror is scary.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but the nursery scene didn't scare you?
I don't think I even remember the nursery scene, to be honest.
The nursery,
like I read this years ago.
The nursery scene, like, actually scared the bejesus out of me. Like, and I've read that book twice, and so I know how it ends, and it still scared the crap out of me.
I think this is going to be much more like on the nose.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know, guys. I'm like, this is the point of book club, right? This was always the point of book club, was to read
Zan,
things that you wouldn't pick up.
Did you like the later books then? Let me know. So I actually met the authors of it. They were the guests of honor at a Gen Con a few years ago,
Nice.
and they were the nicest people. Like really
Yeah,
friendly, really gracious, really kind.
that's nice to hear.
Their panel was awesome. Like, and it was so packed, because at the time the show was really popular.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was really.
The show is very good. I have not watched
Okay.
it all. I am pacing myself because I listened to the first 3 on audio this year because I want to finish the
Okay.
series because the last book is just coming out, I think, this fall. And I was like, I just need to finish this. And so I've been watching the show as I've been reading a little bit, although it's clearly not a matchup properly. But I have really liked it.
I tried to watch the first one, so it was when I was watching things very illegally, and you like try and like watch some things illegally, like the video quality of some of the things you get is just not
Yep.
great, and it was
Yep.
just horrible. Like it just
Yep.
wasn't great, and then all the
Mm.
links that would have been higher quality, um, they kept the way I used to do it. As I had this jailbroken Fire Stick. And the software program I used, if you clicked on something that the link was broken for, uh, it would go to the Rick Astley, being like, "You know the rules, and so do I."
Oh my
And
gosh.
all the links that were for the higher quality video would just go to that. And I was like, "Damn it!" So I never watched past like the first episode.
Oh man, I try so hard to like avoid it because I'm so impatient with fidgeting with that kind of crap. But like the number of subscriptions that are required these days,
No, it's ridiculous.
we're just creating a new like cable package out of subscription services. It
It's
drives me nuts.
ridiculous. Well, I don't hardly ever watch television. I don't actually have a television right now. And so I got cable recently and it came with a free HBO Max account. And so now I feel
What?
like I know. AT&T, thank you. This is now a
Man.
shill channel for AT&T. Uh,
Please sponsor.
and and now I feel like, oh, I gotta watch something else. I'm like wasting this free account and like I don't
Hmm.
know what to watch though.
I'm gonna have to rotate through. Like I hate having Amazon Prime, but The Great is coming back in November, which I'm really excited
Oh,
about. I
I,
only got
I
Apple Plus because of Foundation.
I do have Amazon Prime, which the only thing I'm looking forward to on that is the Wheel of Time TV show.
Oh, the trailer looks actually very good.
Shockingly good.
Like shockingly good.
Shockingly good. Like when I
I've
say
only read
that
the first book in that series, and I don't remember anything about it. But
I've
like,
read, I just finished the 6th book this month, and it was an abomination of literature. It like
I've
made
really
me.
heard the middle chunks are not great. But then again, I'm thinking Sanderson maybe fixes it, but I don't think that's true
It
necessarily.
made me angry that I learned how to read. It was just awful. Anyway,
Oh my gosh!
so but the TV show looks really good, and I was
Yeah.
shocked. It's like kind of amazing to like watching the TV show and like clearly like already just like the emotion that they're clearly putting into these characters and stuff like
Hmm.
that, and even the dialogue and everything. It's kind of funny because like all the dialogue in that trailer that was like really cool and epic, like none of it is in the books. Like not a
No, it's the thing.
single
I don't
line,
remember.
not
Nothing
a
about it
single
felt
line
familiar to
was
me.
from the book. Yeah, no, not at
But I
all.
read Eye of the World. Like I read it so long, like probably 10 years ago, and I struggled to get through it. It took me months to get through it, so long. And so I was watching the trailer and I'm like, I don't remember literally anything, but then I'm like, maybe they just really have changed it. I don't know.
I liked the Eye of the World. I thought the Eye of the World was good, and I
Yeah.
liked the Great Hunt. For me, like the books like took a steep decline in quality in book 3, and I was like, oh
Oh
my
no.
god.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I'll be very intrigued to see how the television show does. But
I
it's
do want to
funny
watch
because I
it.
think that if the TV show is good, like what's going to happen, and like this, maybe this is me being like a complete bitch, but what's going to happen is that people who hadn't read the books before, they're going to watch the TV series, and be like, "Wow, this is really good! Like these are books. Let me go read these books," and then they're going to read the books, but like, what the hell is this? Like, oh, like what the heck? Like
Like all these garbage books.
yeah, I know.
I
That's
mean, they were written, the first ones especially, right? Like there's a long history on these.
Yeah, I mean, they were written. The first one was written. Okay, I mean, I tried. The first one was written in 1989.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Sorry to
See
any
how it
Wheel of
goes.
Time fans watching, but yeah,
So
Zan's
much to
almost done
watch.
with the series.
Maybe
He's
they'll edit, right? Like maybe they'll just kind of Game of Thrones this and have like a divergent path.
Oh, they have to. Well, they have to cut out a ton. Like, yeah, I agree. I don't know how anything past book 4 is filmable either. Like, it's, and I'm not even trying to say that to be like it's bad. Like, I just don't understand how you could possibly cut it into a story that makes like sense on screen.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting. But I do think the
Yes.
show, like the quality of the TV show, looks pretty good. So, and I'm
Yeah. No, the
excited about,
trailer was.
and I'm excited about Dune next month. I know
Oh, me
The
too.
Europeans already got it. I think it
I
looks really
haven't
good.
read Dune, and every couple of weeks, I think I'm like, do we have a book in the library? And I know we do. I just keep looking at it and like not
I
placing a hold.
know. I've not read Dune either, and to be honest, the number one reason I've not read Dune is that like literally, I think all of the covers are hideous.
Yeah, there's so the sequels. I okay here at the library we have a copy of Dune from like 10 years ago, like a cloth bound
Mhm.
hardcover. And then the sequels have a whole bunch of like really colorful, fun trades, and I think you could get a better edition now, but I don't know.
You know the one I grew up with, like seeing in bookstores and stuff like that, and my dad owned was the one that's got like it's just like a black, mainly black cover, and then like where the title is, there's like just like a little like sandy looking thing.
Oh, I know that one. Yeah, like the
Yeah,
mass market version.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's hideous.
classic. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it before I watch it too, Heidi. But it's been so long since I've been to a movie theater, and I'm not somebody that like actually loves movies very much. Like I'm very film illiterate. Um, but I love like the going to the cinema, like going to the movie theater, and I've not been able to do that for like a year and a half.
I don't even know what the rules are here. I
Well, you
think
know
probably proof of vaccination and whatever, but
the movie theater I would go to because it's where all my family is the Kokomo movie theater, and the movie theater is still closed, like
oh
completely.
yeah. I haven't gone to see a movie in. I used to go to a movie like once a week. Like there was a period in my earlier life, and then I don't go for anything anymore. And I do think there's something a little bit lost, right? There's some movies, and Dune feels like one of those that you'd want to
Mm,
see
yeah,
in
in the
theaters,
theater,
but
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
I probably won't.
I want the silver screen spectacle. You know what
I
I mean?
know. It looks so good.
It's so good.
So,
Zan's reading
looks so
Dune
good.
next. You have to let me know what you think of it. I'm sure I'll see your
Yeah.
thoughts.
I've heard it's very good. I've heard the sequels very much not good, but the original extremely good. So,
I work with a lady that loves all of them.
okay, good. That's awesome.
So
Like that's the thing. That's the thing with all of these, right? It's so personal and such a
yeah,
your own perspective. I think if you love a thing, just like love the thing. Who cares?
yeah, absolutely. And if you don't love a thing, don't be afraid to be like me and be a bitch about it.
I hate Mistborn. It's the worst thing I've ever read. Amazing. All
Okay.
right.
All right. Thank you guys for listening to us chat and talking to us about the book. And we will
So
see
excited to
you
talk in Discord.
next month for Lions of Al Brisson. Very excited. All right.
So
See you
excited.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.